Hey guys, it's BenTbeyondrepair here, and we're going to be going over some of the changes that are made is so far in Split 3. Specifically, we're going to be just in general talking about the item changes in the 14.19 patch, which was the main change of the split, and then talking a little bit about ranking up on a Smurf account versus your main account and LP gains and stuff like that in the current split. And we'll be taking a look at the changes to LP gains in patch 1420. And then we'll be looking at the upcoming patch 14.21, specifically the changes to the bounty system. So we'll be focusing on these, not the whole patch, but important issues in these three patches that are being addressed. So number one, thoughts on the item changes. Obviously, in general, with the start of the split, they took a huge axe to the items in the game, and they essentially decided that they wanted more of the game to be about the champion's identity, and not as much about items. And since items have been so key to how champions play and their identity, it's, your champion is more about, is my type of champion an X item user rather than, my champion being my champion. And they didn't like that. And so, they felt as a way to slow down the pace of the game, make games last longer, make champions more durable and deal less damage, and all of these things, they felt that nerfing all of the items like 5 to 12% could achieve some of those things. And honestly, I think that it's been pretty decent. Obviously, when you make massive sweeping changes to the game like this, you're going to break the game a little bit. And so you're going to get more varied win rates than you saw before when the game was in a more stable spot. So some people are going to complain that, the game was pretty balanced. So why are we going and doing something like this? And that's fair. But I do think that the change is probably positive. I think a lot of people are also going to say we don't really necessarily want longer games. Some people have a different take on this, so it depends on what your opinion is on playing shorter versus longer games. I think some people who care more about just grinding ranked would prefer shorter games, where their lane matters more, team play matters less, and games go quickly, so you can get more games in and that sort of thing. But players who maybe just enjoy a good long back and forth game, and I think everybody who plays League has had those crazy 50-minute long back and forth games. A lot of people like long League games and like getting to the late game and having these important Baron and Elder Dragon fights and things like that. And it is a team game, and a lot of people do enjoy it as a team game, and would actually like it to be more dependent on team fighting, and things like that. And obviously, the same is going to go for people who play certain champions. So, for example, me being a Braum player, Braum is a beast in late game team fights. So if the game goes later, obviously, for a player like me, that's going to feel nice because my champion's identity, is not necessarily in the lane. It's really in what can I provide in a team fight to my team and protect people. And I get to experience that more if the game goes later. So obviously I can see it from, some different perspectives, but obviously some people are going to appreciate that the games are getting longer. Other people are not going to like that so much, but that's just the result of the change. So that's really about all there is to it. I think that they'll continue to fine tune this, and it looks like in 1420 they actually did change a lot of items, in this patch as well. But I haven't read through this. The main thing, and it's actually kind of small, that I want to focus on in patch 1420 is that we actually talked about how bad it was, especially for Apex tier, that it was going to take way too many games to climb back to your main rank. I can pull up my op.gg and show this real quick, but essentially we had been complaining that in my previous split, so if we go back all the way to split 1, I was Masters 406 LP. And then we were talking about how I had gone from 406 LP to 418 LP, which is plus 12 LP And I played like 400 ranked games with a 53% win rate. And I had many different responses to that situation. Here, I think I was blocking it. Many different responses to that situation. And some people were saying, well, you just got to win more than 53% of your games to climb, especially at that rank. You really need to win more in order to deserve to go higher. But I think that people missed the mark. And some people on the other hand did kind of understand this, that I won 22 more games than I lost, right? And I put in 400 hours in one split. So the problem is that if you win 20 more games than you lose, and you're gaining 20 more LP than you win for a win, and the rest of your games you're just losing the same amount as you're winning, which you should if you're have a positive win rate and are playing the same at the same rank that you've been at before the previous split. If I win 20 games and I'm getting that plus 20 minus 20 on average throughout the split, if I win 22 more games than I win, just do the math, right? 20 times 20 is 400. I should have gained 400 LP, or 440 LP if you count the 22 wins, So that's the issue, is that I should have gained 440 LP for the time that I put in and the win rate that I had and the wins over losses that I had, but instead I gained 12. Now, I could understand, right? There are some discrepancies people were talking about. Well, are you winning, at what MMR are you winning at? Did you win more in the beginning of the split and then less at the end of the split? Yes, there are things like that can exist. Although, in my defense, because I was at Master 406 LP before the previous split, I was playing against roughly Master 400 LP MMR players the entire split. And so my win rate was not significantly higher in the beginning of the split and then lower at the end of the split. It was pretty much the same throughout the split. Just, 53%, a little bit higher than 50%, just slightly positive the whole split. So here's the issue, right? It's like, ignoring those things, even if some of those things are coming into effect, if I'm winning 22 more games than I'm losing, I should be making more than 12 LP worth of progress. Like, something's going on there, right? That is an issue. And in my mind, the only reason why I could figure out why I only gained 12 LP last split, even though I won 22 more games than I lost, was because of the split reset being so frequent. It's literally just that the 22 games that I won were just to get back to 418 LP from getting placed in like Emerald 1 D4, right? And so then you climb from Emerald 1. So Emerald 1 is the highest that you can get placed after your first game of your placement matches. But then you can now, and this is like new-ish over the last couple of years, you can now place in like D3 or D4 if you win your placement games after that first one. So you start in Emerald 1 60 LP or something like that. If you have a high MMR account, you'll start in Emerald 1 60 LP after your first placement game. If you win all four or something, you could end up in like D3, that kind of thing. So when you're starting from like Emerald 1 to D3, you're spending those 20 games or those 22 games that you win more than you lost really just to get back to 400 LP. And it's actually worse if you're a challenger player. If you had 1,000 LP, it would be even worse, right? It would take you even more games to get back to 1,000 LP. And so for me, last split, it took me the first 300 of 400 games that I played was just to get back to 406 LP or to get back to 400 LP. Took me 300 games with a very positive win rate, like 53%. Then I continue to win 53% of my games for another 100 games, and I gain like 18 LP, 12 LP, something like this, right? It's like you don't have time to make progress if you only have time to play 3 or 4 games a day, like I said. So the issue is that I'm playing a fair number of games. Like 400 games a split is a ton of games. I've been playing League since Season 3 for a very, very long time, right? We can see here. And the most I've ever played in 1 year of playing League, and I was a very dedicated player over the years, right? The most I've ever played was 1,400 games in 1 year, and that was my second season of playing ranked in Season 4. like when I was in maybe freshman year of high school or something, ages ago. Okay. As a father, I don't have time to play 10 games a day, or whatever, like I did back then. And so there's just no way I'm going to be able to play more than 3 or 4 games a day, if that, right? Now, some people were saying, well, okay, look, your life changed, right? You can only play 3 or 4 games a day. So therefore, you can't climb anymore. Well, that's not really true. If you're winning 22 more games than you're losing on 400 games, you should still gain 400 LP, which is 20 LP times 20 would be 400 LP. So why should I not be able to climb if I'm doing well? Now, if I was only able to put 3 or 4 hours a day in every day or something like that, and I wasn't able to improve because of that, so I was only winning 50% of my games, fair enough. But that's because I'm not getting better at the game. I'm only winning 50%. But if I'm winning 53% of my games, 400 games played, plus 22 wins over losses, I should be gaining my 440 LP. Simple as that, right? So this is a big problem. Then it turns out, headed into this split now, when we go into this current split 3, apparently they did a harder reset than normal, or at least that's what I've heard. And people were saying, oh, well, nobody reads the patch notes, so people just didn't realize that this was a thing. I read the patch notes. I have been talking about it here on this channel. It's not in the patch notes that they did a harder reset. In fact, I can't find it anywhere. So again, I really get frustrated with Riot and their lack of communication, because if you suddenly decide this split we're doing a harder reset, which everyone appears to agree is common knowledge now, why isn't it in the patch notes at all? So 14.18 was the last patch of last split, so it didn't mention it, I believe. And then 14.19 is the first, patch of this split, like we've talked about, of split 3, with all of the item changes and all of this. So let's just quickly skim this and see if we can see where it says that there is a harder reset. We've got a huge system update, nerfing almost every league item in the game between 5 and 12%. By doing this broad nerf, we're hoping to reduce some snowballing, slow down late game combat pacing, and make overall combat in the game more readable. Blah, blah, blah. We're movement speed, ability haze, blah, blah, blah. We're also re-adding lethal tempo back into the game, and minor updates to, small updates to a few minor runes, blah, blah, blah. Elise has been rescripted, quality of life. These are the champion changes, Cassante, Tristana. We're also adding several usability and quality of life features, blah, 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 blah. A new announcement has been added for epic monsters. When your jungler gets invaded, you'll get a ping, blah, blah, blah. If you're looking for a deeper dive into the gameplay changes, you can click here. I looked at this. It's not in here either. This is on the combat pacing with the item changes. This is on lethal tempo, runes, quality of life improvements. These are things like, this has nothing to do with ranked. And then the item queuing. Don't forget your items, objective announcements, potions and biscuits, the jungle invade, and then the my bad thing that they added. So it's not in there either. Okay, so we keep going. It's not in the picture for the patch highlights. Here you've got items, runes, trinkets, skins, champion changes. That's it. They actually never put the rank changes in the picture, even though it's probably one of the most important changes. Ultimate spellbook. This is, whatever. This is like a different game mode or something, right? Honor. The my bad interactive thing, it should be in here if it was going to be anywhere, right? See, ranked split 3. As announced in the 14.16 patch notes, it'll start blah, blah, blah at each time, local time. Shard transfer will be disabled, so you can't, transfer accounts. Rank queue is going to be disabled with the split end. Similar to previous years at the start of Split 3, they get rid of the duoing restriction temporarily, since your ranked is reset lower. Earn visual rank duo restriction will remain the same. So this is saying it's MMR-based duo restriction. It's disabled for the first patch of every split. I've always found this kind of weird, to be honest, but, it is what it is. And as Split 2 rewards will be granted, might take a few days. Ward XP, champion changes, item changes, rune changes, split 3 quality of life updates, literally doesn't even say anything. Item shop and queuing, the items, purchase reminder, jungle combat notification, the objective spawn timer announcements, tower missile visual effects, tower plate gold, potion highlights, and now we're on to ARAM, and there's bugs, and then skins. So no, it was not mentioned in the patch notes that there was a harder reset. In fact, I'm not even sure that there was a harder reset. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. People seem to be saying that that's the case, but I don't know that there's evidence of that, right? So the point being is that moving into the current split, apparently there was a harder reset, which they kind of allude to it in these changes we're going to talk about in 1420 for the LP gains. So let's see. Last season, we made it a bit too easy for players to hit some of the higher ranks, and the number of players in equivalent ranks across regions varied too much. This is a really bad take, by the way. I mean, we just talked about how there's like 4 times the number of players playing in Korea as there are in NA, and so as a result, you get 4 times the number of master players in Korea as there are in NA, maybe even more. That's just to be expected when you've got 4 times as many people playing. Now, if you want to make it like Challenger or like GM, where there's a set number of players. So Challenger in a major region, in case you didn't know, it's actually different depending on the server. It used to be way, way, way back in the day in like season 2, season 3-ish or whatever, that there were only like 50 players in Challenger. Right now, in a major region, there are 300 players in Challenger, and the top 1,000 players are GM plus, meaning there's 700 players in Grandmaster. And then there can be as many people in Masters as get there. And I think that that's a totally fine system. For some reason, Riot wants there to be the same number of Master players in Korea as there are in NA, which is confusing to me because why? Like, they specifically design Masters like Diamond where as many people can be in there as possible, or as get there, right? And there's no hard limit on the number of players. I think if they really want there to be the same number of players in Korea in Masters as there are in NA in Masters, just set a limit. Like, say, you know, like, okay, well, we were at 300 in Challenger, 700 in GM for 1,000. Maybe we can have 4,000 players in Masters for a total of the top 5,000 players being Master Plus. Do something like that. Don't arbitrarily make it like, you know, harder to get back to Masters through like a harder reset that you don't put in the patch notes or tell people about, and through just way worse LP gains and losses compared to the previous split. That just doesn't make any sense, right? And then not tell anybody about it too. It's just so obnoxious. So I don't agree that across regions there should be an equivalent number of players in each rank. Obviously, even if you look at a rank like Gold, there's going to be more Korean players in Gold than in NA because there's 4 times as many people. So I don't know what rank this is true other than a rank like Challenger and GM where you set a hard limit on the number of people in there. Now, this is an interesting phenomenon too. Like I just mentioned, not all servers have 300 players in Challenger. Some smaller servers, I don't know any off the top of my head, but I would imagine in like Latin America North, in Oceania, in Latin America South, in the Middle Eastern server and stuff like that, some of these non-major region servers will still have like 50 or 100 or 200 people in Challenger instead of having the top 300 be Challenger, because there aren't as many people and not as many of them are necessarily deserving of Challenger. So this is another thing that doesn't make sense. You don't even have the same number of people in Challenger in every region. Do they say major regions? No, they don't. So, you know, that doesn't make sense either. And then it's like, okay, well, if you want to stick a cap on the number of players in Masters, stick a cap on the number of players in Masters. Don't beat around the bush and secretly change the LP gains without putting it in the patch notes. It's just, you know, really non-transparent behavior from Riot yet again. Blah, blah, blah. So obviously people complained, people noticed. I made a video complaining about how basically there was no point for me to continue playing on my main account because if I'm going to spend 300 games just to get back to the same LP I was at the previous split without ever having the opportunity to make any progress, even though I continue to beat players at my MMR and Masters like 53, 54, 55% of the time, like what is the point of continuing to play instead of spending time with my family? Like you have to at least offer players who are winning and improving actual results in their rank and in their LP. Otherwise, what is the point? Why would I keep playing? As someone who plays ranked to get better, as an Apex tier player who most, people, I've talked about this before, people play ranked for different reasons, but for an Apex tier player, it's usually about climbing past people and getting to the top echelons. I've been in GM multiple times before. For me, I want to get Challenger for the first time. That's my goal. If I see no path to get Challenger without me playing 5+ games a day on an account, that's not really viable for me in my life. So I'd rather just step away from the game entirely, because what is the point of playing at that point? Like maybe I'll play like 1 game a day for fun or something like that. Or like one weekend I'll hop on and play a few games. But like, what is the point of continuing to play if I'm beating the people at my rank, but I'm not getting to make any progress, not getting to get to Challenger or wherever? So, that's kind of the way that it is. And as a result, as I talked about, Riot will lose people who feel like they're not making progress or are being arbitrarily held back by there being too many resets. This is actually, we're talking a lot about Apex tier and high elo, which I'm in, but for lower ranked players as well, who take the game less seriously and put even less time into the game, you have people who play less than 1 game a day. They go a couple of days, they don't play, they come in 1 day, they play 3 games. You have people who, League is just not their primary thing. It's a secondary hobby, or even if it is their main hobby, they have a more healthy relationship with their hobby, like we've been talking about, and they spend 7 hours, a week doing it or something like that. These players who play like 1 game a day and they're in gold or something, well, even if they're winning 60% of their games, they're never getting out of gold if there are 3 resets a year and they're spending all their time getting back to their rank that they were at before. They're spending all their time just getting from silver back to gold and never getting to make any progress. So it's like, well, what is the point, for that player? And is it fair that a player who's winning 60% of their games against gold players all the time, for them to still be playing in gold instead of like climbing higher? It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's see. As a result, we wanted to make some of these higher ranks a bit harder to achieve this season, so ranks are more comparable across different regions. Why? There are different population sizes in different regions. Why would they be comparable? As a result of this change, some player placements were a little harsher than intended. So this is where people are getting this from, right? So what they said here is that their placements were harsher than intended. Not the LP gains that they were experiencing afterwards, but their placement, which means there was a harder reset, and they just didn't mention it in the 1419 notes at all, which is ridiculous, right? It's, again, lack of transparency from Riot. People put so much time into this game. It's just so sad that they can't even do the basic courtesy of letting people know that, hey, Masters is going to be different this split. It's going to be harder to hit. It's going to take more games. If you were Masters before, you're going to get placed lower than you expect. They don't even tell anybody what's going on. They just, people have to feel it out themselves. When they feel like their LP gains aren't what they're used to, they kind of get an idea, they form a conspiracy, they rant about it, and then it turns out, the next patch comes out and Riot says, oh yeah, we actually did do that, sorry about that, maybe we went a little bit too harsh. So some players' placements were a little harsher than intended, so we're walking it back a bit. This patch, players should expect to see increased LP gains as a result. So I did a lot of reflection on this situation because, we can hop back into the situation we were talking about here. So obviously we went through the history of these last 2 splits. So I get to master 406 LP, end the split. I reset. It takes me 300 games to get back to 400 LP with a 53+% win rate. So I'm beating the people at my MMR. I'm playing against the same 400 LP MMR players from the time I got reset, and we all got reset together until, the time that I finish out the split. So I'm just beating my peers, not heavily, not 60%, but I'm beating my peers more often than not, and I should climb as a result. Winning 22 more games than I lost should result, normally, if you were gaining plus 20 and minus 20 on average for every game that you played, would result in, plus 440 LP. Instead, I got 12, right? So then I get 12 LP. I play another 100 games at, 53% win rate still at the end, and I get my 12 LP for the split, right? That's my progress. Then we come into this split. The reset is harder than expected. Rather than gaining plus 30 or plus 40 coming out of your placements like you normally do, maybe minus 10 or something like that, and then you play 20, 30, 40 games, and then your LP gains kind of go back to normal as you start to approach back to your rank. Now let's talk about why that is, because I think that confuses some players. So if your MMR was Master 400 LP, when you reset, your MMR is still mostly the same. So your MMR is still very high. And so when you get reset and placed in Emerald 1, even if your MMR was soft reset to, let's say, roughly an equivalent to like Master 0 LP, you're still having Master 0 LP MMR, but you're in Emerald 1. So there's a discrepancy there. And the result of that discrepancy is, well, you're gaining 30 LP and you're losing 10, because even if you were to just continue winning 50% of your games, you're winning 50% of your games against Masters Tier 0 LP players who were Master Tier 400 LP as well, the previous split before. So you're continuing to play against mostly people who were the same rank as you last season. Now, there is a little bit more variance where you get some players who are a little bit lower and some players who are a little bit higher until things kind of sort themselves out. But still, on average, you're playing against Master 400 LP type players, because you're getting some higher, some from Challenger or GM, and you're getting some lower from like low Masters or Diamond 1 or whatever. But the average is that you're still playing against the same people, or the same MMR that you were playing against before. So even if you just won 50% of your games when you got placed in Emerald 1, you deserve to climb to Master 400 LP, because you're winning 50% of your games, not against Emerald 1 players who are back in like wherever, I don't even know, but you're winning 50% of your games versus Master 400 LP players, proving that you belong in Master 400 LP, which makes sense because you were there doing the same thing last split. So it is fair that you get plus 30, minus 10 or whatever when you're in Emerald or when you're in D4 while you're climbing back to Master 400 LP. That just makes sense. It's the same reason why a player who was Platinum 4, gets put back in like Silver 1, but their LP gains are crazy because they're still playing and winning versus Platinum players, and they're obviously still capable of winning versus Platinum players and in Platinum. So they're going to gain more LP, and then everyone will climb out. Gives an opportunity for players to kind of sort themselves out, for a little bit of shuffle to happen. Maybe some player was a little bit lower, and gets into some higher quality matches at the start of the split, is able to hang, and it gives them some upward mobility. Maybe players were boosted or bought accounts, and those players are not going to be able to climb, and so they're going to get their account stuck a rank or two lower. That's the point of the reset. But players who are legitimately able to hang at the rank that they were at last split and win 50% of their games plus should be climbing right back to their main rank, and they should be climbing right back to their main rank quickly. Is another big deal, right? It shouldn't take 300 games. So why does it take 300 games? This seemed to confuse people too. Like, they almost don't even believe it, because in lower ranks, in gold or whatever, you only go from like gold to silver. So the reset is softer the lower you are. I don't know exactly how the math works. And they've changed it over the years, especially because they're doing 3 splits a year now, 3 resets a year. They've made the resets softer because they're doing 3 of them, but maybe not soft enough. The way that it used to work is, let's say 1200 MMR was like Silver 4 MMR, which used to be average. What they would do is they'd take your MMR, let's say you're a 2000 MMR player, and they'd average it with 1200 MMR. So you were 2000, there's 1200 is where people start, and so they'd add 2000 to 1200, you get 3200, and then you divide by 2, it's an average of 1600. So you just went from 2000 MMR to 1600 MMR and you experienced a soft reset, a net of minus 400 MMR. Well, imagine you were a 3000 MMR player, and now your MMR is getting cut with that, or average with that, average 1200 ELO player. 3000 plus 1200 is 4200. 4,200 divided by 2 is 2,100. So now you lost 900 from 3,000 to 2,100. You lost 900 MMR. Well, losing 900 MMR is a lot bigger than losing 400 MMR. So that gold player's reset was a lot softer than that challenger player's reset. The other issue is that challenger, GM, like high master players have very, very high MMR, or they're like much further away from Emerald. So because there's a hard cap on the highest you can place is Emerald 1 after your first placement game, that means that there's a minimum massive drop in face rank compared to other ranks, because you could be gold 4 and get placed in like silver 2 or something like that, and that's barely anything. You went down 2 divisions. But you could be challenger 1000 LP or 2000 LP and drop all the way to Emerald 1. Well, that's a lot bigger of a drop. So you're experiencing a bigger drop in MMR the higher rank you are, and you're experiencing a bigger drop in face rank the higher MMR you are. And so as a result, it takes longer to get back to your rank the higher rank you were the previous split. So that's something people don't seem to understand. So like when people hear me say that I took 300 games to get back to my main rank, even though I was winning 53%, they're like, that doesn't sound like that's true or could be correct, because for me in gold or in platinum, it took like, 50 games max, or it took me like 20 games and then I was back at my rank. Well, that's how it works down there, but for Apex tiers, it's very different. And it becomes problematic because, as I said, it can't take you 300 games to get back to your main rank. Otherwise, you don't have any time to actually climb. And so you could be winning 60% of your games and it wouldn't matter. Even if I had won 60% of my games there, so what? I would have gained like, 50, 60, 70 LP, something like this. It's really not enough progress because I was spending 3/4, 75% of my split just getting back to the rank I was at previously. Now, of course, you do everything you can to improve and get better at the game. I would love to win 60% of my games, but it's not that easy. So let's talk about this split in this situation now, right? So far this split on my main account, I've played 45 games and I've won 5 more than I've lost, for a 56% win rate in solo queue. Pretty decent, right? It's a low sample size, so that's probably a lot of what's going on there. But I am currently, 3% win rate higher than I was last time. Certainly a 56% win rate is pretty decent start, right? And yet I'm in D2 28 LP. So if you look at the math, and I started Emerald 1, and by the time I was done with my 5 placement games, I was actually in D3. So I went from D3 to D2 28 LP, so like 1 division in 50 games. We could say, with the 5 placement games, if you take those away, 40 games to go 1 division at a 56% win rate or whatever, right? So here's the issue. It's the same math as before. If I were to try to get back to 400 LP, I'm currently 600 LP away from 400 LP. So if I gained like 100 LP in about 50 games, it's going to take me like, I'm 600, what is that, like 300 games to get back to Masters 400 LP, which is exactly the same thing I experienced the previous split. Well, there's the issue. If I'm only playing 300 or 400 games a split, it doesn't really matter if I'm winning 56% or 53%. There's no time for me to make any progress on my main account. So I was doing a lot of introspection because I was seriously considering, like, what is the point of even continuing to play? In fact, I stopped. I haven't played a game on my main account in 2 weeks. I stopped at this point because I was like, what are we really doing with our time here? What I learned from reading through many people's different takes on the issue here is it does not take 300 games to get a fresh account or a Smurf account from like unranked or from like silver or gold or whatever, it won't take you 300 games to get a Smurf account to master 400 LP. And I think they're right. I bet that it will take me less than 300 games to get a Smurf account or a fresh account, unranked account, whatever, to 400 LP. I think it'll take like 100 or 200 games max. So we're going to test this theory. And so what I'm doing personally is I am going to be playing on a Smurf account instead of playing on my main, because Riot is essentially encouraging people to play on their Smurf. Because the reality is that you need a new account every split. Because if you don't play on a new account, you're going to have to take 300 games at a 53 or 56% win rate. You're going to have to take 300 games to get back to your previous peak if you were 400 LP. Imagine, again, it's worse if you were higher. So imagine you're Agron, who had 2000 LP in Challenger. It's going to take him even more than 300 games to get back to his main rank. So why do that on your main account when you'll get back to your main rank on a Smurf account or a fresh account in like 100 to 200 games? It just doesn't make any sense. So the issue that Riot is ignoring is they have actually made it easier and easier for Smurf accounts to rank up very quickly, but harder and harder for people's main account to get back to the rank that they were at before. So all that they've done is incentivize people to start on a new account every split. They're incentivizing smurfing. And I hate smurfing because I know a lot of people, right, don't like people ruining games in gold, in platinum, in emerald, etc. All of a sudden, this challenger player, this GM player, this like whatever player, high master player comes into their lobby, and now the game is dictated by this one guy, and it's really bad. Like, I can tell you that since I started playing on my Smurf account that I'm ranking up now for this split, I have had lobbies where their support dies like 15 times, right? Because we're hard smurfing on them in like gold or plat. And their team at the end of the game is like telling their support to like, Caitlyn headshot IRL because I was smurfing, and they don't know that I'm smurfing. So they just think that their support player is like the worst possible person who's wasting their time and trolling them. And it has nothing to do with their support player. It's because I'm in their game and I don't want to be in their game. In fact, I hate playing in their game because they don't know how to play the game. And it's frustrating to play with teammates who are way worse than me at the game and to try to like, put the brake pedal on because, oh, we don't actually think that we win this all in because we have no idea how our champions work. So my experience is bad because rather than playing a bunch of games at my main rank, which I want to be doing, versus people who understand how to play the game at the same level that I do, where we're on the same page for the most part, I'm forced to play a bunch of games with people who have no idea how to play the game, and that's frustrating for me. They're forced to play the game with somebody who is like taking control away from the outcome of the game as a Smurf and like dictating the pace of their game, and dealing with someone who has unreasonable expectations of them because they're, I'm smurfing with them. And the other team is stuck with some player who's going 0-10 because they're playing against a smurf through no fault of their own. And then they're flaming that guy and making him have a terrible time playing the game because he happened to play against me. So I hate smurfing. I think Riot should do their most to, utmost to like get rid of smurfing. But here we are. This is another example of why there's so much smurfing, is Riot is incentivizing it. Now, I want to touch on one more thing about this. A lot of people said, well, one of the reasons why you're only gaining 18 LP or whatever, 12 LP, is because if you look at all of the accounts that are in Challenger, the reason why you're not hitting Challenger is because all the accounts in Challenger are so good at the game. They're winning 70, 80% of their games. Well, guess what? The people who are winning 70, 80% of their games, if we go to the leaderboard, are fresh accounts for the most part. These are not people who have played on this account for 10 years like I have on my main, and they started, Challenger 1000 LP last year or last split, and now they're Challenger 1000 LP again and beating people at a Challenger 1000 LP levels, 67% of the time. These are people who are creating new, fresh accounts. look at the levels on the accounts that are in Challenger. Okay, we'll just look at some. Some are high, right? These people are playing on their main accounts the whole time. Some are not, and we've got a ways to go because we're still sort of at the start of the split. But like a level 105, so this account has only been active for like not very long. Level 62, not very long. 174, maybe that's medium. Like maybe account's been active for a split or two. Same thing with this one. This one is obviously an OG, level 704. 179, we're kind of pushing it there. These guys are OGs on their main. This one's level 41. These two guys are OGs. 154, 290. Okay, these guys are OGs. Like 82. There are a lot of accounts in Challenger. It's a little bit confusing actually, because so I will say one of the reasons why this doesn't look as stark as it does later in the split is because if you're getting Challenger early in the season, we can see there's still only 24 players out of 300 in Challenger. If you're getting Challenger this early into the season, it's because you had an account that was already Challenger MMR, and so you were closer at the start. That's kind of the reality. But or it could be. Because let's say that you had really high MMR, you were 2000 LP, you were 1000 LP. It's very easy for you to hit the 500 LP threshold very early on because of your LP gains and stuff like that. Although maybe that's changed now because of what we've been talking about with the harsh LP gains and placements. So it's hard to say, but yeah. Usually I think you would see more low level accounts. You'd see more low level accounts the later into the season we go. This is a lot because we're at the start of a split, and so a lot of people have gotten to Challenger, on accounts that already had high MMR. But you will see a ton of accounts. I would estimate like half of the accounts in Challenger are usually like accounts under level 100. That's usually the reality towards the end of the season. And so it's not that these guys, and this is the other thing that you can, I guess, keep in mind when you're looking at that too, is like, so what is the win rate that these guys are maintaining? Are they maintaining a 60% win rate versus Challenger players, or are they maintaining a 60% win rate versus like platinum and diamond, and then those type of players? And so there's a big difference there. And so what people don't seem to understand is that when there's an account in Challenger with an 80% win rate, it is almost never someone who's beating Challenger players 80% of the time. It is someone who started a new account and was able to win a bunch of their games. So let's just look, for example, at like the highest win rate accounts on here. You've got an account with a 67% win rate, and then these guys are all between like 55 and 63% on a pretty low sample size of games. Then you've got a guy at a 71% win rate, right? The two that have the 67 and the 71% win rate are all fresh accounts, basically. This account maybe played a little bit last split and ended in platinum. We can go look at that, right? They ended in platinum. So they were kind of starting from that area. This account had played a little bit. Oh, no. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, this one was platinum. This one was actually Challenger last split. So this is really impressive, right? Like, shout out to this guy. Somebody might want to look at picking this guy up. Wait, there's no results. This was split one. So then I do have to wonder a little bit, but I don't know how this works. This was actually a question we had. So this guy played these games in split one, but then took split two off on this account. My question is, it used to take a year for an account to fully reset. So one of the questions I have is, does it only take like one split now to reset an account's MMR? Like if you don't touch the account for a whole split, does it completely reset its MMR? Or is it 2 splits? Or is it 3 splits and still a full year to completely reset an account? Because if you didn't know, what you can do is you can take an account, and even if it was placed in ranked and was in like platinum or something like that, if you don't play any ranked games on the account for 1 year, after that 1 year, the account will be completely reset in terms of MMR as if it was like a fresh silver account coming in. And so you can actually use that to like refresh your accounts and farm new fresh accounts to use without having to level a new one up every time. And I might start doing that because, like I just said, it looks like the way to climb to, if I want to get into Challenger and I don't have a lot of time to do that, the more efficient way would be to climb on a Smurf account, because it's not going to take as many games is my guess, and we'll see. So we'll see, how many games does it take me to get back to Masters on my main versus on a Smurf? How many games does it take me to get to Masters 400 LP on my main versus on a Smurf? And I'm just going to run this experiment, and I'll do both accounts, and then we will report back, and we'll see, okay, it takes 100 less games, 200 less games to get there on a Smurf. So why would I continue playing on my main? I should just stop playing on my main, switch accounts every split. You should have just a new account every split. And how many high elo players do you see do that? A lot of high elo players, a lot of Challenger players do that. So, we have to use these things, when Riot forces us to, especially if we're limited on time. So obviously, let's talk about the LP changes and if this is going to save it. The answer is no. And I'll tell you why the answer is no. Think about what we just said. My understanding, and I do understand the game very well as someone who's played for a very long time and played in, high elo for a long time now. My guess, which is pretty accurate, is that it's probably going to take me like 100 less games. So I think on a Smurf account, in 200 games, I'll be Master 400 LP. On my main, in 300 games, I'll be Master 400 LP. So think about that for a second. The LP gain and losses adjustment that they would need to make in order to make up for that gap in benefit from playing on a Smurf versus on your main would have to be 33%. A 33% increase in LP gains and a 33% decrease in LP losses. Now that's never going to happen. That would mean, on an average account that's like gaining plus 20, minus 20, you would have to gain, what is 33%? Not nice numbers. 6.6. So you'd have to go from gaining 20 LP a game to gaining 27 LP a game, and you'd have to go from losing 20 LP a game to losing 13 LP a game. And so my question is, if I go on to my main account, we will see this at some point, and I play on patch 1420 with these LP changes, am I gaining plus 27 minus 13? If I am, then that's probably as efficient as playing on a Smurf account, and there's no reason for me to be incentivized to Smurf. If it's not, I'm probably better off and faster playing on a Smurf, so Riot needs to fix that discrepancy. And this is only getting worse, by the way. We've talked before about True Skill and Riot's changes related to smurfing and account placement and stuff like that. That's one of the things I focused on talking about. And True Skill is very good at placing people into a higher rank if they can hang there, like we talked about, win 50+% there, faster. What Riot has been doing over the last couple of years when it comes to smurfing is, rather than trying to stop people from smurfing or banning it or something like that, what they're trying to do is just make it less disruptive by making you get to your rank faster. That's what they've been working on when it comes to smurfing. Well, the reality is that you can see this conflict here, right? Where if you make it much faster to get to your rank that you should be playing at on a Smurf account, then all of a sudden I may be really surprised. It may only take me like 100 games, depending on, the amount of changes that have been made to smurfing over the years and how impactful they've been. Because again, Riot's attempt to make smurfing less disruptive is just, well, we'll propel this player into the MMR that they, can hang at quicker than we would have before. So rather than a slow, consistent climb through silver, through gold, through platinum, through emerald, and you kind of grind it out a couple hundred games and you get to your main rank, instead it's like, well, if you're winning these games pretty consistently, you're still winning 60%. We're moving you through gold. You're still winning 60%. We're moving you through platinum. You're still winning 60%. We're moving you through diamond. I have seen tons of accounts. In fact, they're a type of account that I look out for in my own games. It's the classic, like 60-70% win rate, fresh account that's in like Diamond 2 or Diamond 3 or Diamond 1 or something like that. And they're getting into these high master lobbies because their MMR is very good. But actually, unfortunately, there's a bit of a slingshot effect. And these accounts are accounts of players who actually like peaked D2, D1, something like that, sometimes even D4. But because they're winning 60, 70, 80% of their games, their MMR is slingshotting higher than their peak. And then they slingshot higher than their peak for, like, let's say 3 or 4 games or something like that. They lose a bunch of those games, play terribly, and then they're gone. And then they go back down. And so the system is very good at adjusting people, up and down in that way. But in their attempt, to create speed, they create a little bit of inaccuracy, a little bit of variance. And so the person shoots up a little bit too high in MMR to get tested. They get tested and fail very badly, which hurts my games because I'm being tested, or they're being tested in my games. And so all of a sudden we'll have a random diamond player in like a high master lobby because the guy's got a 70% win rate. Well, he's a D1 peaker who's never made masters in his life. And now he's just been slingshot into our game. He goes, 0-12, and then we never see him again. So this is an account that a type of account that I look out for right in my games. So same effect applies the other way around. They've made it very quick to get back to your MMR on a fresh Smurf account. Well, if you've made it faster to get back to your MMR on a Smurf, and you've made it slower to get back to your MMR on your main, do you see the problem here? Why play on your main? You're going to be forced into just, if you care about your time and you have a limited amount of time to play the game, you care about, boom, going on that Smurf account and climbing rank through that instead of on your main, which sucks because, like, I like, the skins that I have for Braum. I like Santa Braum. I can't play with Santa Braum on my Smurf. In fact, I don't even have a skin for Braum right now on my Smurf until hopefully I get lucky and roll one in a chest, but you can bet I'm not spending money. So, that's their problem. And then this is the thing, right? See this thing that I just went through. Riot knows that people spend money Smurfing. They know it. For one thing, people will want to have a skin for like their main champion. So a lot of people are going to pay, even if it's just $5-10 to get that one skin for their main champion because they don't have it on their Smurf. So that's a reason why Riot has a big incentive to actually want people to be switching an account every split, because those people are likely to buy a skin for their main champion. The other thing is, and I guess this point is maybe a little bit more mute, but I do this when I level accounts, but I haven't leveled accounts in a while. There is a bundle that you can buy, kind of like an XP boost bundle. And it's not the most efficient one, but it is the most cost-effective one, which is you can pay $5 and it's like a starter pack, and there's one for each role. You get 3 champions in that role, you get 3 skins for those champions, and you get 14 days of double XP boost. And over those 2 weeks, you have perma double XP boost for 2 weeks. And this is all for $5. So this is a pretty good deal. And it's a good enough deal that someone like me who does not like spending money on the game feels that it saves so much time, because if it's going to take you 50 hours to level up a Smurf or more, it's going to save you like 25 plus hours for $5, right? And you're getting 3 champions, 3 skins. I think they give you like an icon for your role too. So it's just like for $5, that's obviously worth it if you're hand leveling your own Smurf accounts. So another reason why Riot wants people to have Smurfs is because people buy XP Boost or that pass, which is an extremely good deal. And so they know they're going to make like $5 almost every time somebody makes the new account, because they're going to want that skin, or they're going to pay to unlock their champion, or they're going to pay to get that XP boost. Now, of course, a lot of people buy, accounts third party, but Riot's been really cracking down on that with the anti-cheat, the Vanguard thing, right? They banned so many of those bot accounts. So I don't know what the situation is on that. Like I said, I hand level my Smurfs because I bought a Smurf account online one time, ranked it up to Diamond, and then the account got banned for having been leveled with a bot, and I never saw the account again. that is a huge waste of time for me because I don't want to spend 100 hours playing on an account and then it get banned because I bought it for $5 or whatever. So I'd rather pay the $5 to spend a day or two leveling it myself. The account's guaranteed to not get banned, and and I get that other stuff or whatever. But that's just kind of the issue, is that like Riot's going to make money off of people buying a skin. They're going to make money off of people buying the XP boost. And you'd say that there's an alternative in going and buying an account that was level for you, but that's becoming less and less available to people with the rise of Vanguard. So obviously Riot's probably doing this on purpose to push people into spending more money, like, duh, like everything that they do. Okay, so the LP changes, like I said, unless I'm getting plus 27 minus 13, not going to make up for 100 less games or more. That is going to be the difference between how long it's going to take me to get to 400 LP on a Smurf versus 400 LP on my main, which is ridiculous, right? Because obviously it should take me less time to get it on my main, because my main has already proven that I can play at 400 LP. I shouldn't even have to get it again almost at all in the first place. I should just almost automatically get back there. So to play 300 games to get back there is so ridiculous. And I'm smoking these players. Like, I get it. It's not like 60-70%. It's not a crazy win rate. But if I'm winning 56% of my games versus people who are masters 400 LP, you don't think that I deserve to, like, I don't know, like end a split, GM instead of just hitting it and then not getting there? Like, it's just ridiculous to win 22 more games than you lose and to gain 12 LP. So that's all that there is to it. Finally, let's round it out with the bounty changes. So I think it's pretty obvious that if you're in high elo, it's just a matter of doing the math, right? It's like, no matter what rank you are, you're going to say, about how many games do I think it takes to get to the rank that I was at last split with a Smurf, and how many games is it going to take to get there on my main? Do I care so much about the name and the skins that I have on my main account that I want to get there with that account specifically, even if it takes a little bit longer? Or do I just care more about the time and what is most efficient? And the reality is like I said, Riot has made it faster and faster to get back to your main rank with a Smurf account or a new fresh account, and they've made it slower and slower to get back to your main rank with your main account. That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, they haven't done like the cost benefit versus, what if they play on a Smurf versus playing on their main. The result is that high elo players will figure this out, like I have, and obviously other players have honestly been doing this for a long time, and people will just switch accounts every split and I guess spend more money on skins, and Riot will be happy with that, and it will suck because we're going to have to level up a new account every split. It will suck for the gold players that have to play even if it's just a few games, that have to bear with me playing in their games, and then the platinum players that have to bear with me, and then the emerald players, and then the diamond players, and then the low master players. So it is what it is. But Riot forced me to, right? And then finally, we have the bounties, which I've watched a little bit through this, but obviously Freak is saying that they're going to be overhauling the bounty system in the upcoming patch, which is 14.21. And, so we'll just go through some of his slides and talk about this. I've listened to most of what he said about it. Basically, champion bounties and objective bounties are getting updated. The goal is less snowballing and more stringent comebacks. This first systematic goal doesn't make any sense. I'll tell you why. If the game has less snowballing, so when they say more stringent comebacks, they mean like, and he says, it's less likely for there to be a comeback. Well, if there's less snowballing, like if the team who's winning and getting ahead is getting less ahead, then there will be more comebacks because the other team is getting less ahead. So these two things can't happen at the same time. They're literally counteracting each other. Now, maybe you could find some levers to pull that are going to affect comebacks more without affecting snowballing as much. And maybe you can find some levers to affect snowballing without affecting comebacks as much, but they are very much tied to each other. So in a game where teams are going to snowball harder and harder and harder, it's harder and harder to come back. So I don't know how you can have both of these at the same time. They're just working against each other, it just doesn't make any sense as a goal. So we're starting from a very bad place here because our goal is to do two things at once that we can't do. So that's a problem. Player goals. Bounties can be complex under the hood, but they should make intuitive sense to players. I don't agree with this statement either. Everything in League is transparent. Or at least it's supposed to be. Obviously, it's a complicated game. Some systems are more complicated, but the changes that I've liked the most from Riot over the years are the ones that have actually tried to simplify things and make it clear to people. League does a really good job with clarity. Like, let's say you compare League to other MOBAs. Believe it or not, as complex of a game as it is, everything from visuals to like what stuff does is very clear in League. Compared to a game like Dota or some other MOBAs, especially visually, right? But let's say everything should be transparent about what it does. I don't actually think that it's true that the bounty system can be as complex as they want it to be behind the scenes without telling anybody how it works, and that's fine. I think that the bounty system should be transparent. Now, they said the only thing they said against this, that Freak said against this, was, well, we don't want people to know how it works because if they know how it works, then they'll try to abuse it. Well, maybe just design a system that can't be super abused. And obviously, like, people try to abuse everything in the game and exploit everything in the game to their advantage. That's what people do in a competitive game. That's like literally the whole point of the game, is to know how a system works and then try to exploit it. Like, that's kind of the point, right? So that doesn't make sense. Also, if it's easy to understand and they're transparent about how it works, it will make more intuitive sense to players. But yes, I do agree with the second part that it should make intuitive sense to players. Of course, everyone can agree on that. And I also agree with Freak that the old system didn't necessarily make intuitive sense. So let's see what we got here if we move on. So let me move my camera and cover up the boulder. Okay, no offense, sort of. Old kill streaks or death streaks. So the way that this worked is one kill or death fully reset. So if let's say that you got one kill when you were 0 and 6. So the way that the old bounty system works for champion kills, and we're talking about champion bounties right now, and then we'll get into objective bounties later. The way that it worked is you had tiers, and if you were at 0 deaths, 0 kills, whatever, you're in the middle, right? You're worth 300 gold. What happens is that if you go 0 and 1, then the next time you die when you're 0 and 1, you're worth less gold. Up until 6 deaths, at which you become worth like 92 gold, you're basically like a cannon minion. And then you can't become worth any less gold than that. So it's like 6 plus deaths. So even if you're 7, 8, 9, 10, you're still worth that amount of gold. If you get one kill, you completely reset all the way back to being worth the full 300 gold. Well, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? Because if you're 0 and 6 and now you're 1 and 6, do you really think that a 1 and 6 player should be worth 300 gold? No, that doesn't really make sense. In fact, not only does it not make sense, it doesn't make sense to the point where, like, sometimes you die to a player who's 0 and 6 and you're like, oh, that's a good thing. And let me explain how bad this is. If you add it up, right, we'll not get into all the math, and this video is already a little bit long because of how much I ranted about ranked. But let's say that you were you have these bounties, and let's say it's like 300, 250. These would be nicer numbers than they were in the old system, but like 300, 250, 200, 150, 100, right? Let's say it was like that, right? Well, if you die when you would have been worth 100 gold, but now you're worth 300 gold, you give the other team an extra 200 gold. So let's multiply that out by like all 4 or 5 extra deaths. So essentially, let's take a player who would have been like 0 and 12, but instead of going 0 and 12, they happen to get one kill and go 1 and 12 when they were like 0 and 6. How much extra gold does getting that one kill, which gave them 300 gold, right? They gained 300 gold from getting that one kill. How much extra gold do you end up giving the enemy team if you end up going 1 and 12 at that point? had you just not gotten that kill at all. Well, you get 300 gold for the one kill, but because you go from being worth 100 gold to being worth 300 gold, on just your next one death, you give them an extra 200 gold than they would have gotten. So you're already almost back to even with them after just one more death. After 2 deaths, they're probably actually gaining more gold as a team if they manage to kill you 2 times after your gold resets there. They actually managed to get more gold than you got, even though you killed them when you were behind. And so it just doesn't make any sense because you did something really hard. You killed them when you were 0-6, but instead they gain more gold as long as you die 2 or more times after that in the game. That just doesn't make any sense. This is the other thing that really confused people. But I knew this especially as a support player. If you got an assist, it counted as -1 death. So let's say that you were 0-6 as a support, like 0-6-0. Should be a disaster, but let's say you were 0-6-0, and then you pick up 1 assist. Same thing could be said for a top laner, whoever is 0-6-0. So let's say a top laner is 0-6. If they pick up 1 assist, they move from being worth, that like 92 gold or like 100 gold or whatever, to being worth 1 tier above that. So let's call it like about 150 gold. That's kind of crummy too, because a support could be 0-6-6, which is a terrible scoreline for support. But if they got 1 assist along the way, they're completely reset. So support's almost always worth 300 gold because they're almost always getting more assists than deaths. So unless the support is like has less assists than deaths, they're always going to be worth 300 gold, which is something people don't think about, right? Like if you kill an 0-6-6 support, that person's probably really easy to kill. If you kill an 0-6-6 support, you get 300 gold. If you kill an 0-6-0 top laner, you get 100 gold. Big difference, just as easy to kill, doesn't make a whole lot of intuitive sense, right? Comparative farming was confusing. This was super confusing. You could be like 0-6, but boom, you got 50 CS or something like that, or 100 CS since the last time you died, and so now all of a sudden you have a little bounty, even though you're literally like 0-6. That doesn't make any sense, right? Streaks could be unfair. For example, Freak mentioned, oh, you get 2 kills in a row, but you are 0-6, so now you're 2-6. Well, should someone who's 2-6 even be worth a full 300 gold, let alone have a bounty? And now they're worth, someone who was 0-6-0 gets 2 kills in a row, which is very impressive for how far behind they are and should be maybe rewarded. But instead, that person who was 0-6-0 and who's now 2-6-0, they've reset because they got 1 kill, so they reset to 300, and they got 2 kills in a row, so now they have like 150 gold bounty. So now all of a sudden you have a player who's 2-6 and is worth like 450 gold plus another 150 gold if they get an assist. So the other team's like making bank, They're getting like 600 gold off of killing this guy who's super easy to kill. It doesn't make sense. So the new format is taking into account kills, deaths, assist, and farm, and it's based on gold, right? And all of these things contribute to gold, so it's based on gold. 1 kill sometimes equals 1 death, but not always. So for example, if you were very far behind, 1 kill is not going to count the same towards you getting a bounty as if you were really far ahead. Same thing with assist. This is a big deal that nobody ever seems to talk about in League, but I'm glad Freak is bringing it up. When you get a kill in League and it's a solo kill, it's only 300 gold. But when your teammate ganks you and you get a kill, it's 450 gold for your team. Because if nobody gets the assist, then no assist gold is granted. But you get an extra 150 gold for free if somebody gets an assist. If you didn't know, if multiple people get an assist, they split the 150 assist gold. So like if 3 people got an assist on the 1 kill, the guy who got the kill gets 300, and then the 150 assist gold would be split among the other 3 people, so they get 50 each. But the point is that a kill with people assisting is worth more than a kill without people assisting. Well, that's a little bit weird in and of itself, to be honest, because you would think that actually a kill without help from your team should be more rewarding. Whereas if your teammates needed to help you to get the kill, you would almost feel like, especially if you were the person who got killed by like four people, you would want that to be like maybe less rewarding. But it kind of already is inherently because they're giving up resources and time in order to be able to do that. So, there's that trade off naturally, anyways. But them just getting an extra 150 gold matters. And so Freak is taking into account here with the new system, like, okay, well, this person is 4-0, and they're also 4-0, all on kills that somebody assisted them on. So their team generated as a whole, their team generated not just 300 gold times 4, but they generated like 300 gold times, you know, times 4 plus 150 assist gold times 4. And so it's taking assists into account as well, which I think is good. Farm is scaled and different when positive or negative. So this means if that farm is going to have a bigger impact if you're already ahead versus if you're behind. So if you're that person who's just trying your hardest when you're, 0-3 in lane or whatever, and you're just trying to get 100 CS in a row without dying, you're not going to get a bounty probably under the new system for having managed to get 100 CS in a row without dying. So that's good, and that makes sense. And tuning is meaningfully different. So, I mean, I just wish they would be more transparent with how it worked. I think that would be fine. I think that they could have a really simple and clear system. And I think that that's when League is at its best with balance changes, is when they have a simple, clear, easy to understand system. They say that one of their main goals is for it to be intuitive. Well, one way to make it really intuitive is for like you to tell people how it works and for it to work in a very simple, intuitive way. So just do that. But obviously this is what they're changing to. This is what he said about how it works under the hood, is that gold matters more, XP matters less, turret takes matter more, because it's not just the amount of gold that you get from the turret, but it's also about the vision that you lose, the security that you lose, the access to that area that you maybe miss out on. Those kinds of things have an impact as well. Grubs now affect it, which makes sense since the other objectives do. And obviously, it's pretty clear that if you have like 5 or 6 grubs, that makes a big difference. I do wonder maybe very fine details about how this works. Like, I wonder, there's a big difference between like 5, 6 grubs is obviously really impactful, whereas like 4 is not that big of a deal, 3 is not that big of a deal, right? A lot of times I do wonder, because people will do this, like, let's say that you manage to take 2 grubs just so you deny them getting the Void Might spawns. I wonder if taking 2 is better than taking 3, because taking 3 would have more weight on the bounty system, even though like 2 versus 3 doesn't matter, in terms of actually taking them. So that would be interesting, but that's a very fine detail. Overall turns off sooner. So when one team, so we're talking about objective bounties now, this is different. When a team gets the objective bounty, they have like time before it runs out if they keep pushing stuff, and it's going to turn off sooner, which I think is good. You could see really big gold swings as a result of that. And they said overall, like somewhat less gold. And, so that means they are tuning down the amount of gold that you're going to get from objective bounties, which makes comebacks a little bit harder. Overall, I think that the actual changes were pretty decent, or they haven't happened yet, but the changes as they're proposed here actually look pretty decent. I think that the bounty system is really confusing, and while I'd like them to make a simple, transparent version that they tell people about, I think that this is better than nothing, and it's going to be a lot better because you're not going to see those situations where somebody's like, 2-6 and has a bounty, or is doing really poorly but has a bounty because of farm. These like very common situations that you see. I'm interested also to see if for supports, if assists matter less for, or more for resetting your gold, because I think obviously before, like, again, like I said, like in 06 and 6 support is actually doing really poorly and shouldn't necessarily be worth 300 gold. I think that, like, in general, An assist is not worth, one death or one kill. I would say on average, like 3 assists is worth like one death or one kill. But even that can be hard to balance because it depends on the type of support champion you're playing. Like if you're playing Leona, it's more like 2 assists to one death would be like decent. But if you're playing like a Jana or something like that, obviously it may be more like 4 or 3 to one death. And then you can't really have a system that takes that into account based on the champion. So that gets really confusing. So that's interesting. And then obviously, I mean, this should be obvious, but let's say you're a support and you take a kill. I think support should really be discouraged from taking kills. But it doesn't matter that much because you're already worth the 300 gold. So let's say you were 0-6-6. For a top laner who's 0-6 to take that one kill really bad, like we talked about, because it resets their gold completely, since they don't have those assists, since they're not really participating around the map in the lane as much as other people. But for a support, if you're 0-6-6, so you have the 6 assists, you're worth 300 gold anyway. So taking one kill, if you have to, doesn't matter. And that's kind of a nice freedom that we had. So interested to see how that changes with the new system. So that about wraps it up. To summarize, the item changes have obviously had their intended effect of slowing down the pace of the game, but it has messed with the balancing of the game a little bit. I wouldn't say too bad. I don't think it's that bad. I think the balance is okay right now. It's definitely slowed down the pace of the game, increased game length, but I think it hit the mark for the most part. We'll see. And that was in 14-19 at the start of the split. Unfortunately, people noticed that there, for Apex tiers, harder ranked reset, way worse LP gains and losses coming out of your placements than in previous splits. That Riot was not transparent, did not tell people that that was going to happen, did not mention it in the 14-19 notes. I don't know why people are like defending Riot and gaslighting me into thinking that it should be in the 14-19 notes when it's not, and they just never mentioned it. Like people are saying like, well, people just don't read patch notes. It's in the patch notes, not in the patch notes, not in the dev blog, etc. We've obviously covered extensively now my experience playing this game over the last 3 splits. I don't think it should take 300 games to get back to your main rank, even at Apex tiers, because that's going to take you the whole split and you'll never have time to climb. Even if you're the type of player who's winning 53, 56, 60% of your games, doesn't really matter. You don't have a lot of time to climb if you're on your main account and it takes you 300 games to get back to your main rank. That's a big issue. You also have to keep in mind that they've made it faster and faster to get to your main rank on a Smurf. And so comparatively, it may be much faster to get back to your main rank on a Smurf than it is to get back to your main rank on your main account. Therefore, Riot is going to encourage more people to Smurf. Not a good idea, not a good look. Clearly something that they haven't been considering, that they're pushing people into smurfing because of these changes to making it harder to climb in Apex tier. Now, they tried to address this and admitted that they went too harsh on Apex tier and their LP gains and placements in patch 14-20, but their LP gains, I imagine, will not be enough to remedy the situation because you need to see probably a 33% increase in LP gains and a 33% decrease in LP losses in order to approach the same pace at which it would take you to get back on to your main rank on a Smurf. And we'll see, because I still have to, do it and test it, but it may even be faster than that. Like you may even need a bigger change than that. I don't know that Riot is really willing to give people that many LP gains for free. So probably not going to happen. And that's probably not what the change did. It probably wasn't that big. So if I'm gaining like another +2 LP or something, that's going to make no difference to me. And I'm still going to be incentivized to play on a Smurf. So their patch in 14-20 when it comes to fixing Apex tier LP gains was a failure. In 14-21, interesting, good approach to changing champion bounties and objective bounties to be a little bit more intuitive. I do like the direction they're going and some of the goals, but I think that they're trying to achieve contradictory things at the same time. And I think that they should just design an objective bounty system and a champion bounty system that is clear and simple, and that will be the most intuitive system. Look, people are going to try to figure out how these things work, whether you tell them how they work or not. They will figure it out, just like they did with the last one, and they will use that to their advantage in the best way that they can, and understand like the negative points to it that they have to avoid, and play around it accordingly. So just be transparent about how it works and maybe make a simpler system. I don't agree with the premise that it can just be as complicated as Riot wants it to be behind the scenes or under the hood, as long as it feels intuitive to the player. Because, well, a lot of players just do go off of the intuition, but there will be players at higher ranks, especially, who will figure out exactly how it works and abuse it, unless you create a simple, transparent, good, unabusable system, which they should do with all of their systems in League. Simple as that, right? You shouldn't have items that are super easy to exploit, that are giga OP. You shouldn't have a bounty system that's super easy to exploit and super OP. And League should all be about transparency and people understanding how the game works. That's what I'm all about. And so, best of luck to Riot. Best of luck to you guys. Good luck in solo queue in Split 3, and have a wonderful day.